Welcome back to Hidden Power. This is a Pokemon podcast. Today we've got a very special guest. You probably know him. It's Dan, aka aDrive. Today's going to be all about Pokemon Legends ZA and Mega Evolutions. We ask him what his favorite and least favorite aspects of the Pokemon franchise. We're also going to find out what his favorite Pokemon games are. And later in the episode, he even shares with us what goes into creating a monster catching game. My name is DustyGogoat. Today I'm with the LumiosePost.
Hello.
SoulSilverArt.
What's up?
And here's the episode with Dan, aka aDrive. Thanks for coming on. We got aDrive today, dude.
What's up?
So I'd love to get your thoughts on Pokemon Legends ZA. We're kind of in a drought period when it comes to news, when it comes to rumors, when it comes to really anything to talk about. But this is still groundbreaking information. The fact that the game exists, the fact that we're going to get a new Legends game, the fact that we're going back to Kalos, a lot of curveballs. A lot of it also kind of makes sense when you go back and look at all the signs. But I'd love to get your just first reactions when it comes to this new game that we're going to be getting in 2025.
Yeah, so first things first, Mega Evolution, big win for me. I'm a big Mega fan. I've been hyping up Megas for years. I've always felt like it was just the perfect mechanic, and I know obviously they change it up every year with Z moves and then, Dynamaxing and whatever else. And
yeah.
I do appreciate some of those, but to me, Megas were just the best. I feel like the designs were great. I just love taking, kind of not so good Pokemon and giving them some new life with things like Mega Beedrill and stuff. So Megas, in my opinion, is a home run in kind of itself, right? So seeing that come back to the franchise, I'm very excited. In regards to the Legends itself, I was a big fan of Legends Arceus. That's not the game that I think has a ton of replay value, but I think...
You don't think so?
I really don't. I don't think it has a ton of replay value. I know for me personally, it was a game that I did beat the story like 2 or 3 times, which is probably more than most, but that was it for me. Like I'm not itching to go back to it.
Yeah.
But from a first time experience, I was blown away, man. I was enthralled. I was in it. I loved it. I thought Legends Arceus just had a fresh breath of fresh air for the franchise. And when I think back to like the last, handful of games that I've covered and played and things like that, Legends Arceus to me, I would say, is my top game that I enjoyed the most. Just from a pure enjoyment standpoint of just exploring the world, having fun playing the game. I think they nailed a lot of things, and I think it's interesting that there was such a change up from the formula, and yet for me it resonated so powerfully. So I'm excited, man. Legends ZA, like I said, to me that's like best case scenario. I'm still on the hype train that there might be a Unova game this year.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up later.
I'm not giving that up yet. Yeah. If I'm wrong, it's whatever. That's kind of the fun of speculation. But I'm definitely excited for it. I think for me and for many of us right now, it's just a matter of like, all right, when's the next news drop? What are we waiting for here? How late in the 25 are we actually looking right now? There's a big difference between February of 25 and November of 25, right? There's a very big difference there. And I think that the quality of the game could also change drastically based on the answer to that question too. So a lot of exciting stuff.
When do you think we are going to get information? So, I mean, let me ask you that, and then I'll move on to what I want to say next.
Yes, I mean, I think by summer probably. We got the World Championships Hawaii this year.
Sure.
I don't know. Is that August?
Yeah. Lumi?
August.
Yeah, they announced it's like August, I don't know, 8th, 13th, something like that.
Right. So like naturally there's going to be something, considering they haven't shown us any gameplay. I think that, we're inevitably going to get something. But the reality of it is, if Legends ZA is at the second half of next year of 25, then we have a really long road ahead of us in waiting right now, because it does not make sense for their marketing cycle to really ramp up until they're a few months away. So that could be looking like a really big hype period towards the end of the year. If we're looking at an early launch next year, if we're looking at like a late launch next year, then it might be dry for a while. But that's why I kind of still am hanging in there that there's going to be these Gen 5 remakes. Just I feel like it fits really well into the timeline of everything. And I think it would be really hype. And we saw them do it already once. So anything's possible at this point.
Right. Yeah, I feel like what makes most sense to the tinfoil theory that we're going to get like new games in 2024, the thing that makes the most sense is that they're trying to show us the shiniest object first, right? That's like focus on the game that you're gonna get, that you're gonna love, that'll be undeniably great, which is gonna be Legends ZA, right? That's exciting. There's things to latch onto, right? And then maybe in a couple months they're gonna be like, and just by the way, you can also buy something this year.
Here's our faithful remake.
Yeah, right? yeah. Let's not put too much emphasis on it. You guys didn't love it. At least the internet, Twitter didn't love it. Anyways, so
they sold decently well, BDSP.
They did, yeah.
They outsold Legends.
And that's it,
crazy.
right? When we look at the bottom line here, this is a company that is designed to drive revenue, and if they're able to do that, I just have a hard time believing that they're sitting in their board meetings in Nintendo and Pokemon, Creatures Inc., or whatever else. They're sitting there and saying, yeah, we're totally cool punting on 24 with our main series. I just have a really hard time believing that when they've shown the complete opposite for a really long time now, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot of pressure. This is a company that has a lot of demands and people who have high expectations. For them to just say, yeah, we're not going to do anything on the main series video game side for all of 24, essentially. I don't know, man. That's a hard tough pill to swallow. But
we just got the announcement. We just got the announcement of Pokemon Works as well, which there's a lot of implications with that. We don't really know much about it, but we had a couple episodes about kind of the implications of a new company like this. This could be I think it's partially. It's partially
Ilka and
it's Ilka and maybe the Pokemon Company or Game Freak specifically. So the implication there is that maybe they're going to be churning out these like glorified ports, as I call them, which I'm fine with that, right? If we get more Pokemon experiences on the Switch on modern consoles, I'm all for it, right?
And that's just it too, right? It's not as if it's cut and dry that it has to be Gen 5, faithful remakes. They can go back to Johto. Like there's a lot of angles that they can go. So that's why I until we get to like September 1st, I'm still on the hype train that there's going to be a game in November.
Yeah.
Wow, September is a long way to wait.
Maybe
actually,
maybe world.
Yeah.
Safer statement. Yeah.
But that's what's crazy because the only reason why we're holding on to this faith is that Riddler Coup, the guy who has been right so often, has told us so cut and dry that we will be getting Gen 5 remakes.
I wouldn't say cut and dry.
Listen,
but,
that's true. It gets filtered. It's like a game of telephone,
he's gonna get
right?
flamed in the comments now. Oh man!
But I think that is what has been suggested to us. So now we're waiting for that to be answered.
Pyoro as well.
But there's
which
been
is
plenty
a big deal, right? That multiple people were saying that.
That's true.
Like not just Q. Pyoro was also saying it.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that, aDrive?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you could always go back to the whole like a broken clock is right twice a day kind of thing, right? There's always the chance that these predictions are not all that outlandish, right? At the end of the day. But the reality of it is Ku has a pretty proven track record at this point. I think anyone doubting that they have some sort of a connection is just not a different planet. I don't know. Obviously, they have inside ties, and there are a few people in the community that are reputable sources. So
I mean, he's also been wrong in the past. Like he's been wrong before.
Yeah, but I think that like to expect that an inside source to be 100% accurate, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. The reality of it is like when we go back, and so many of us have done it, when you go back and you go through the lines of every tweet that he posts, and you're like, okay, that was right. I'm sorry, you can only get lucky so many times, right?
Yeah.
To get right. Like it's very clear.
Absolutely.
That there's an inside source,
and
but
sometimes he's just trolling us.
Right? I'm sorry?
And sometimes he's just like responding to Lumi or myself and just trolling us. It has nothing to do with an actual rumor.
And that's the thing, right? I think he's playing marionette. He has a little bit of fun, puppeteering the community puppets. Stuff. And honestly, like my take on it is I just embrace it. Like whatever the roller coaster I'm going on with Ku and whoever else, let's just hop on, let's have some fun and see what happens. At the end of the day, like, I don't feel that it spoils my game experience when the time comes to actually release. I generally am more excited or whatever it may be. So I just get along for the ride and have fun. And then whatever ends up being true, great. If it's not true, whatever. But I think we can all agree that like going on that ride is probably better than like stepping off leaving the amusement park for 10 months at a time.
That's literally the truth. That's it. That's like, that's the whole point of it. It's like, we are trying to still enjoy it, you know?
That's it. Yeah, exactly. Right. I feel like and I can think back to many times in my content career playing Pokemon, how many dry seasons there were where like you're going 16 months where like the community couldn't care less about what's going on in terms of the world of Pokemon, more or less, right? Like the greater online community anyway. And like these rumors and these leaks and these drippings of potential information that may or may not be real, I genuinely believe had lifted the community up in many times when it would have otherwise been very down. So
no, dude, absolutely. And I think us on Hidden Power, all of us are like pretty young in our content creation like lifespan, right? Like I don't think any of us have really experienced a drought. There's always been another carrot that we know is like at the end of the year or something, right? To keep us going. I mean, I'm thinking about 2015? There was nothing, right? That was one of the worst years. There's more than that.
There was a few periods. I like the X and Y ORAS period was nice because we had both games. It was really good for shiny hunting, which is obviously what I was kind of doing. That's kind of where I had my my kind of rise in content creation. I specifically have nightmare memories of the summer after LGPE drops, man. I really like that game in hindsight, but grinding that game over the course of an entire, so I don't even know what came after.
No, dude, you're absolutely right.
It doesn't even, I don't even remember, but I just remember it being this slog. And I just remember like every day showing up to my desk to create content on Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. And I'm not going to lie, man, I felt like a piece of my soul was like leaving my body. It was
understand.
The shiny hunting method was like you literally leave your controller where it is, right? Like you set it up, you leave it, and then you start working over here. You're like responding to emails.
Oh my gosh.
That's
I
bad.
think the thing that really helped me is I always just enjoyed the streaming side. So
yeah.
So regardless of what I was playing, I was going to be able to enjoy the community in the stream. But there was some rough days in there in that summer. I just remember that summer was rough.
Yeah. So let's take it back to Legends ZA, right? So you said Megas is something that you're like really excited about. That's something that's resonated with you. I do think it's interesting. We've had this discussion before, but I do think it's interesting that like Megas will be coming back, but in a different setting, in a different gameplay style, right? If Legends ZA is gonna function like an action RPG, if it's gonna function like Legends Arceus, that would suggest that the Megas themselves are going to be, at least we're going to interact with them in a much different capacity. And we've even speculated like maybe it's going to maybe Megas are going to function like how they do in Pokemon Go, where you can Mega Evolve something and it stays in its Mega form even in the overworld. I think that could be really interesting. But do you have any thoughts on that or any expectations for how we're going to play with the Megas?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is the question of, okay, so if Legends ZA does not have what ends up being the competitive game for Pokemon, what is it going to be? That's where my head first goes, right? And obviously, we have Scarlet and Violet right now, but are they going to be playing Terra, Scarlet and Violet battles for another year after that? I don't know the answer to that, right? So that's the first thing that my head goes to. But I do agree with you that it would almost make the most sense that Legends ZA would have a similar battle system to Legends Arceus, or, it's probably not going to be the typical battle system, and thus Megas are going to change. At the end of the day, like, my love for Megas, I think, stems from the battling side, right? Draft League Pokemon was a big one, drafting a Mega Evolution, having it on your team and stuff. But again, just from a lore perspective, from a design perspective, this idea that you can take this garbage Pokemon that otherwise, not really going to do a whole lot for you. You can give it a Mega Stone and all of a sudden it has this whole new realm of possibilities. It's one of the reasons I love like regional forms so much, right? Yeah. Just reimagining these creatures that I loved growing up, or playing through games and having them in a totally different kind of vibe or usability pool or whatever it may be, was something that just really always appealed to me. So in terms of the battle style and how Megas are going to function, I'm not going to say that I've spent a ton of time thinking about it. I think I'm just like still like Megas, yeah. But you bring up some good points. There's a really good chance that it's a totally different system, and that it may not function the same way. But like I said, I'm just glad to see them come back to the franchise, because for years I've wanted them to revisit it, because of all the mechanics that we've seen, of all the different kind of gimmicks, as people call them. To me, Megas felt like the one that had the chance to actually stick and like really be a part of the franchise
forever.
And that seems to be what's been the case through some of the spin-off games and stuff. But to have them bring it back to the main series again, that's, for me as a Pokemon fan looking many years into the future, that's something that gets me excited as well.
Yeah, it definitely seems like that might happen with this as well. Like, if I just made a post on it actually, which is funny that we're talking about it, but if if they put Megas in this game and there's no competitive in this game in Legends ZA, then naturally they're going to have to move to Gen 10 with the Megas. And so does Megas just continue? Is Megas just going to be a part of Pokemon like going forward, like as a standard battle gimmick that's just there all the time? It's interesting. That's the short version.
It should.
I mean, because when you kind of look at the competitive landscape, my understanding from the top competitive players is they actually don't really like Megas as much as maybe a casual person like myself would. I think that some of the other mechanics lead to maybe what is more favorable in competitive, whether it be the Dynamaxing or the Terra. I quite like Dynamaxing, but I just feel like when I look at the full picture of the Pokemon franchise, Megas they just stand out to me as a really good solution to provide this like super powerful creature that highlights what the original version of it did.
And it's the core of what Pokemon are, right? Like Pokemon is battling, it's trading, it's catching, and it's evolving, right? And I feel like Mega Evolution, like those designs, even though I would argue aren't really, they're obviously not true evolutions, because they're not different monsters. They're just like obviously a mega evolution of the monster.
Right.
But I do think when you look at the design, when you look at the key art, right, the Sugimori art style, like they just look like full new Pokemon. And when you remove those, there's like a disconnect there. It feels like Dexit. It's like, where the heck is this Pokemon that I love, right? Like, where is this? Where all of the other forms, I feel like Dynamax, I don't care about as much, or I guess it's Gigantamax, or the Terra hats.
I'd like to see Gigantamax. I'd want it.
I don't
feel that way because it was tied to 3 turns. You know what I mean? Like hypothetically, you
Sure.
can have a Mega the whole battle, but
Yeah.
that Dynamax is ending in 3 turns, guaranteed.
That's a good point. Yeah. So yeah, I just think megas in general, I think people like them because they feel like it's like what you were saying, like a regional form, right? Where you're like, I like this design. Where is it? It feels like an actual monster, a buddy, like a friend, right? They say like Pokemon should be designed to like feel like friends, and I feel like even the megas fulfill that. Where the Gigantamax forms, they're not. They're like Goliaths, right? That's not your little buddy. I think
also too has a lot of. I mean, I think for one, it has a lot of weight and nostalgia for us because it was like the OG gimmick, and then for 2, you do also. The reason I think that it could, like, to go back to what Soul was saying, continue in Gen 10, continue onwards, is for one, we've seen it exist with another gimmick before. It was in Gen 7 with Z moves, and no other gimmick has done that since. And then for 2, just looking at the gimmick itself, it's not a hard thing to, I think, exist in battles with Terrastol or Dynamax or whatever. But then also, too, I wonder how competitive players would feel about it in like a different format. Because one thing that people started talking about recently, I don't remember what VGC player said this, but some VGC player, a relatively big one, posted on Twitter that they actually thought that Z moves would actually be really well received now with open team sheets. And so that's an interesting side of it too, I think. Like, how would it differ if we just changed other things about competitive? Maybe it would be more accepted there as well.
It'd be cool if like the Gen 10 game had access, or we had access to all these different battle gimmicks, and then with each season, maybe every year, they're like, well, this is the Z move era, or this is the year of the Z move, and then the metagame, the competitive VGC metagame has to like shift, and adjust to that whole new gameplay. That'd be kind of interesting. But yeah, so aDrive,
You have an idea for them to implement.
what is it?
I said that's too good of an idea for them to implement.
Yeah. We got a lot of those. What so I mean, I'm expecting there's going to be new megas implemented.
100%. There's got to be.
Yeah. Is there anything that stands out to you where you're like, this needs a new form?
Yeah, I think when you look at kind of the library of new Pokemon that have been introduced into the game since kind of the Gen 6, Gen 7 timeline, there's a lot of really cool potential Pokemon that I think could get megas. So I think it could really span it. And it's hard to even like predict what's going to get one when you have things like Audino getting them, right? It's like, where did that come from? There's obviously a very strong lack of presence in Gen 5 for Mega Evolution. So that's something that I think could make a lot of sense as we approach these next few months and what the end of the year could look like. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing in my mind that I'm like, oh, that's definitely going to get a mega. Obviously, I have a few favorites, but I think there's got to be new megas. If there's not, then, oh man, that would be very disappointing, I think.
I'm sure you're pulling for Mega Mothim.
Now, I mean, listen, I like Mothim a lot. I think that there's other better candidates, though. There's
well, I want Mega Mothim.
Soul wants Mega Mothim.
I need
like it. Don't get me wrong. I feel like when I think of some of the newer Pokemon that have come out, I think that there could be some really cool ones. Like I think of like Low Kicks is a really cool.
Sure.
I really like. So I'd like to see them explore a little bit there. Mothim is, always a special Pokemon to me, but yeah, I just, as much as I've theory crafted a Mega Mothim a bunch of times, I think it would still be bad.
Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. There are definitely some that I feel like the Mega design is much worse, like actually kind of ruins the original design. Like Heracross. I'm not. They know that, but I hate Mega Heracross. I hate that
Mega
design
Heracross
so
is cool,
much.
Though. It's cool.
It grew on me. It definitely grew on me.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird because it doesn't look like Heracross. It looks like a different Pokemon.
It looks like Heracross's cousin.
Yeah, it's like a distant uncle.
What do you got against Heracross's cousin?
That's what I'm saying. I like it. I like it. I think the Mega.
Yeah, Beedrill. Yeah.
But I do like your idea of like, revisiting Gen 5 too, because I think also that would kind of in turn perhaps even help the sales of a hypothetical 2024 Unova remake, right? Because it's like, oh, you got to play with all these Pokemon, and now look, they can Mega Evolve, you know?
Yeah, it would tie in nice.
Or they could even put Megas in the Gen 5 remake too, right?
Oh, please.
Wishful thinking once again, right?
Right.
Yeah. The other way where they introduce the mechanic, and then it seems as though that Legends EA may end up being very different than the typical Pokemon games we've seen in terms of the main series, just from the idea that we're seemingly going to be confined to whatever this area of Lumiose was. How diverse those biomes are going to be, what that's going to look like, how much we're going to be able to travel outside of that, or if you don't even have to. I think the Terrarium may have been a pretty solid hint towards what we might be able to experience coming up, but I think there's still a lot of questions to be answered there. So that's why I feel like there's still so much potential for them to kind of give us, I guess the more traditional type of game, and it just aligns with the last time we got Legends. So like I said, I'm gonna ride this until otherwise.
Do you think what time, I don't know, when in 2025 do you think we're actually going to get the game? Because I think we're all speculating it's going to be in the beginning of the year, but I mean, I don't know. They could do whatever they want.
I would think it's got to be towards the beginning of the year. I think there's probably a few pieces here that are being juggled, and I wouldn't be surprised if the new Nintendo Switch console is a big part of this discussion for them, right? Whether or not, because at the end of the day, like this is of all the franchises that they own, Pokemon is certainly one of them that can help them move a new console. So like we saw them do it with Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild a few years ago, if I'm not mistaken. We've seen them do it. If we go back to like the I think it would have been the DS era, one of them, there was maybe it was it X and Y was kind of one of the
I think X and Y was one of the launch titles for 3DS.
Yeah, one of the flagship games for the new console. So it's not uncharacteristic for them to approach Pokemon in that regard and have them kind of be one of their cornerstone titles on a new console launch. So that may factor in here too, and that may be why we're looking at a 2025 release just for the timing of that. So I think early 2025 right now would be my guess until we get other information. I think until they say otherwise, that would be my guess. I have a hard time believing that they're going to announce something in February, say, hey, we're going to release this thing in 2025, but it's actually going to be, 20 months from now instead of, 12 or 13 months from now.
Yeah. And then that was the point I was going to make earlier when you were talking about it, just that why would they reveal it now in 2024, in early 2024, and not do any promotion this whole year, because you're talking about like if it came out in November of 2025, then like their promo cycle should start much later, but they kind of started it in 2024 in the early.
If it's coming out late 2025, what are they revealing Pokemon Day 2025? Are they going to reveal Gen 10 for 2026? And then 2026, they reveal, are they going to get stuck in a loop where they're revealing the next year's game?
Yeah. I think that when you look at the picture as a whole and you kind of evaluate exactly that, right? There is a part of me that's like, okay, well, maybe in the worst case scenario, they felt like they had to just say something that they were working on Pokemon Day. So that way people weren't like, oh my God, they're not doing anything. But like you said, it would be very weird for them to now go another full year, another Pokemon Day without anything new. I think that they'd be setting themselves up for a lot of, frustrated fans, I guess. And again, I just have a hard time believing that they're sitting there in the offices like, yeah, we're just going to punt 24. Like, I just can't believe that without the promise of something early in 25, because again, this is a big machine, right?
Yeah.
And we know that so many pieces of this machine of Pokemon and marketing and all the things that they're doing revolves around these games. These main series games are what drive the franchise forward. They're what dictate what the anime turns into. They dictate the card sets. They dictate the plushies and the merchandising and all of these different pieces. If they're not releasing new main series games, then the whole wheel gets set back. And obviously there's workarounds and they've navigated that in the past, but to go essentially, 2 full years. And then again, looking at the scope of what Legends EA looks to be, it's not going to be this full fleshed out, ginormous open world where you're going to explore like Scarlet and Violet was meant to be. This is a game that is confined into the city, which may be intricate in its own right.
I think it's going to be immersive.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's going to be as ambitious
Sure.
as maybe some of the other stuff that they've done.
I mean, it's fun. I agree with you, but it is funny because I'm pretty sure they use the word ambitious in the one trailer that they have, right? So, but ambitious in a different way. Definitely ambitious.
I mean, but they're not gonna say this is look forward to Legends EA, our least ambitious game we've ever made.
Yeah.
Our least ambitious title yet.
Yeah. This is one of the worst of all time. I mean,
this will be a game we release.
aDrive, how long have you been playing Pokemon? Actually, can I call you Dan?
Yeah, Dan is fine.
All right.
It's all good. I started playing Red and Blue when it first came out. I have memories of having a link cable with my sister and playing the original games and going through getting my Pokedex in Red and Blue. I even remember having my game file get corrupted because I caught missing no. Right, so like goes way back.
That's good.
I remember
one of those
to get gold and silver with my grandparents when I was a kid. My whole life I played all the games.
I love
pretty
that.
much.
So I mean, I'm assuming you're like us, at least like me and Soul, and you have a bias towards those older games. I'd love to hear what you like and maybe what you don't like about modern Pokemon.
Or older Pokemon,
Because I'm sure you also have a ton of nostalgia when it comes to Gen 6, as you said, right?
Yeah,
which
so
is
I mean,
modern.
Listen, when I think about the franchise as a whole, it's so funny because I feel like so much of my perspective has changed, right? For so long, I wanted what X and Y was. Like as a kid, I dreamed of what X and Y turned into, right? This almost like free roam of 3D and all this cool stuff. And then the next dream was this open world, massive Pokemon experience that I can explore anywhere I wanted. Skyrim was a big game for me when I was younger. I always envisioned Pokemon, but Skyrim.
Bro,
this would be
be the best
thing ever, right? And then we kind of get those things, and now I find myself actually wanting to go back to the kind of pixel-based style games, and it's so wild because I think part of that comes down to my interest and my love for the Pokemon fan-made community, right? Like big shout outs to them. The amount of fan games that we've gotten over the last 8 years or whatever are just incredible. I mean, you can name there's at least a dozen that are really good, like really good. For people that are just volunteering their time trying to make something fun out of their passion, right? It blows my mind. Like, there's a lot of really, really good fan games, and they're all pixel-based, obviously.
Yeah.
And then I think about, I believe that some of the life was sucked out of the Pokemon when they went to 3D, which sounds somewhat counterproductive or counterintuitive, but when you look at some of those old sprites and you look at the 3D model of, like, Imperawat, and you're like, okay, he looked a lot cooler when he was in a pixel form. So I think that there's definitely a nostalgia aspect there. I think as I've grown and kind of experienced these games and either been hyped up or let down by various pieces, I definitely have grown to kind of appreciate, the pixel style games, the old school games a lot more. There's definitely some quality of life improvements, right? When you come down to like competitive, I think the competitive circuit is probably stronger than it's ever been. When you look at,
shiny hunting.
Yes and no, right? Obviously, they have a lot of new mechanics. I still am in the glory days of X and Y ORAS, Friend Safari, horde hunting, chain fishing. That's still the glory days in my opinion. So that was a little later on in the timeline, but I wish I could sit here and say that I love Scarlet and Violet, but I also recognize that like in my situation, as much as that was the game that I wanted to have my whole life for Pokemon, my life changed so much in that time period of it coming out, and my priorities and my focuses and my interests have shifted a little bit too. So while I can say that Scarlet and Violet really didn't do it for me like I was hoping it was going to do it for me, I don't know if any Pokemon game was going to do it for me at the time, just given where kind of my interests and stuff were headed and where, I wanted to take, my creativity and things like that. So I don't know if I can look at this through an unbiased perspective, right? I try to be, concrete in my thoughts and try to be transparent. But I think naturally, just given my path, it's going to be a little biased. So I have a huge appreciation for the franchise, and I appreciate the things that they've done with the franchise, especially some of the innovations, especially with like Legends Arceus. But when I look at the newest game, Scarlet and Violet, it just really didn't do it for me. That was probably the game I played the least since X and Y, which is pretty wild.
I empathize with all of this because, I feel like we can't look at any of these factors in a vacuum. They're all changing. We all have, we're all in different points in our life. I totally feel that. I just bought a house. I'm married now. I have a business. Like there's different priorities, right? And we're all content creators. I got into this game because I spent all my free time shiny hunting, and I was like, well, let me do something a little bit more productive. And now I feel like I never spend any time playing Pokemon. I feel like every week that goes on, I'm less and less qualified to be a Pokemon YouTuber because I don't even play anymore, you know?
You're telling me,
Dusty,
man.
I'm gonna have to kick him off the podcast.
I don't even know if I played. I think the last
saying?
time I played was my Pokemon Day. Yeah.
Wow.
I probably
sort of look at how many hours I probably played in the last year.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess I'm under 20 hours played.
That's crazy. Okay, that's less than me, but
I mean,
I used to max out at
though.
1,000 hours, the 999.
Yeah, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I did any events or anything in the last year for Pokemon. So yeah, I think probably maybe 20, 30, 40, 50 hours, if that, right? Like very small amounts. Obviously I've kept up with the franchise and you know, I still cover it and stuff.
And that's also fine. Like there's different ways to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I find a lot of enjoyment with the cards, and I obviously find a lot of enjoyment with the fan-made games. I think if you said to me, Dan, like, you know, release a new Pokemon Let's Play or whatever, like I am exponentially more likely to dive into a fan-made game and just like appreciate that and see what that creator had in mind than revisit something that I've already done or, you know, whatever it may be. So.
If you're enjoying this episode, please consider supporting Hidden Power on Patreon or YouTube channel members. Right now, we have 4 tiers, and the lowest membership starts at just $5 a month. Supporters get access to our secret Discord server and help control the direction of the podcast. Supporters also get access to our archive of bonus episodes.
Okay, so our Discord, honestly, is popping. We have other creators in there, too, which is kind of fun. It ain't just the 3 of us. We're discussing leaks when they drop. We talk about news. We'll be talking about how SoulSilverArt has, you know, just garbage takes.
It's so much fun.
It's a place for us to connect.
I'm in there every day. Also, we have revamped our merch store. So proud of every product that is in this store now. We have stickers, t-shirts, mugs, ball caps, right? The dad caps. These ball caps are embroidered. Look at this. It's literally an embroidered.
So clean.
You cannot get anything more high quality than that.
I just got news. Do y'all hear that? Bulbasaur says that he even has his own merch.
I'll talk for him. It's beautiful. Very cool designs. You guys should
Very
check it out.
Japanese style.
Even the front of the shirt has a unique logo.
I'm getting one for sure.
If you're invested in this show, invest in the show. Thank you so much for watching, and now back to the video. So what are some of your favorite, or I don't know, like what are some of the things that you actually like about these fan games? Because I haven't played too many myself. I played a couple growing up, but they're always like in the Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4 engine. But they've gotten so intricate in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time it comes down to a few different aspects. Like when I think of my favorite games, I think of like Pokemon Xenoverse is really at the top of the list. I think of Pokemon like Insurgents is another one that I really enjoyed. There's a handful of them, right? There's so many good ones. I think there's a few things. One, I like the difficulty increase. That's a big thing for me as someone who, you know, I'm a pretty adept player, right? Like I understand the game. Right. I know the mechanics. I've competed, you know, at some of the highest levels of Pokemon. I don't need my handheld anymore, but I can recognize that I'm not the average consumer of a Pokemon game. So the fan games will often cater to that, right? They will often have increased AI, or they'll have a tougher, you know, challenges and things like that. And they'll actually be a challenge, right? I also really like diversity of Pokemon, especially in the early game. That's a big one for me. Being able to have a wide range of Pokemon to choose a team from is always a win, especially when Nuzlocking. And I think a lot of the times the stories aren't afraid to get a little outside, you know, kind of what you would normally expect. I love fan-made Pokemon, right? Like that was always a big thing for me, is fan-made Pokemon, fan-made regional forms, that stuff. I mean, that was a huge inspiration for me, right? In starting Elestral. So all that stuff is really the things that highlight to me. And it's a fresh experience, right? You're playing something that, you know, chances are, you know, most people haven't played. As a creator, when I'm creating something, there's a subset of my audience who's played it, and they're always great to help me along when I get stuck or whatever it may be. But the majority of the people watching probably haven't come across this game before, which creates this new exciting situation, as opposed to when I'm like, all right, here's you know, episode 17 of my black and white Nuzlocke, and it's like, yeah, that's great and that's a fun experience, but you know, we've got 807 black and white Nuzlocks that are existing.
Right.
Sure.
You know, how much different can my experience really be? You know, than kind of that. So I think for me, as a creator, the fan games have always kind of been a highlight. And I think now, having created my own game and like really focusing on that, I even more so now than ever before have such an appreciation for the people who put their time into that, because I know just how hard it is, right? And like they're doing it all just out of pure passion, right? And I think that's very admirable.
Yeah. It's funny we're talking about this because like I've heard from multiple people that like they're just playing Poke Rogue. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
Yeah,
I've
I
heard
heard
of it, yeah.
yesterday actually.
What is it?
Yeah, people are going nuts over it. I don't
What
know.
is it?
It's like
Apparently,
so I heard some guys talking about it at Orlando. To my understanding, you were like given a set amount of points, and with that points, you buy a team of Pokemon. But obviously, different Pokemon are going to be valued differently. Like Wormadam is going to be cheaper than an Ursaluna.
Sure.
And then as you battle other people who have their own teams that they've gotten points from, you can get more points to, maybe assemble a different team or to get held items for your Pokemon, to maybe even change moves. I haven't played it. That's just what I heard because it came out like the day before Orlando. And that was actually a thing I heard a bunch of people talking about at Orlando was like, oh yeah, I submitted my team at 1 a.m. last night because I was too busy playing Rogue yesterday. Like it's apparently a big deal.
yeah. No, Hybrid messaged me and he was like, dude, I haven't been online because I just been playing Rogue like nonstop.
Geez.
And I'm like, okay.
I gotta check
I
this
guess
out.
he was like, it's the best game ever. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I know. I gotta check it out.
He's just an addict. So aDrive, Dan, what do you think some of the biggest problems are that Pokemon has right now?
Oh man, I think that's a great question. I think the first thing for me is figuring out what this identity is going to be moving forward, right? Like we've explored this open world now, and they've kind of, dove down a few different pathways of that, and obviously, I think one of the sore thumbs that sticks out is just the performance of these games. I know for some people that's not a big factor, but I know for some it's a huge factor, right? Like I know that I can't even shiny hunt in Scarlet and Violet half the time because it hurts my head to play the game because of frame rate issue.
Wow.
That's not an exaggeration. Like it actually hurts. Like
I know exactly what you mean.
I don't want to sit there for 5 hours trying to find a shiny running through Tauros that are charging after me at 7 frames per second. And I'm not trying to hate. It's just the reality of the experience. So
there's a lot of coping going on in the community for sure. Like even myself, I felt like I'm someone who's like, I don't care about how it looks. It's like whether or not it's fun. But I think in Scarlet and Violet's situation, I feel like the way it looks, the way it plays actually hinders how much fun you can actually have with it. Right.
Yeah. And it's crazy too when I think about that because I was the guy, like I said earlier, and I'm not afraid to admit it. I was all like, yes, open world. Yes, give me this. And I feel like so much life got sucked out from that alone. These towns feel almost soulless in a way.
Yeah,
totally.
I feel like the interactions are meaningful. The fact that I can just skip every trainer pretty much and just, roam around. Yeah, there's some convenience afforded to that, but there's also like, I feel like it takes away a little bit of kind of what Pokemon was.
Yeah.
So I think for me, like understanding what they're gonna do moving forward, I don't think they go back, right? I think this is what Pokemon is now. I think we may see this spin up here with Legends EA, and we might see them experiment a little bit, but I don't see them going back to like typical routes or anything like that. I think that they're in this style game, at least in terms of new. When we look at a Gen 10 or whatever, right? So I just hope that they're able to fix some of those hiccups and kind of breathe a little bit more life into it. With all that being said, though, right? Like, there's a lot of wins in Scarlet and Violet, in my opinion. I do like the Paradox forms. Not all of them are my favorite designs. I much prefer the Scarlet ones to the Violet ones. Even though I was Team Violet, right? Like, I thought Miraidon was awesome, but like, I get their names mixed up. The purple guy was awesome. But
right. You're right.
When I look at the different Paradox forms from the future, I thought a lot of them were, when I look at some of the Scarlet ones, I'm like, those are pretty sick, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's some wins there. There's some kind of fallback there. I think the story was solid. There were parts of the story that I really liked. There were parts of the story that I thought was kind of but that's Pokemon in general. So at the end of the day, like I recognize that they're trying to appeal to like a really, really big audience. There's a lot of people out there who just pick up Pokemon, they play it for their 20 or 30 hours a year, they put it down, and that's really their core market, right? Like that person who's gonna pick up a game, play it for the 30 hours, put it down, maybe pick up a plushie or some cards here or there or whatever. Like that probably makes up like 95% of the customer base, if we're being honest. And some people may not even beat the game, right? Some people probably buy the game and don't even beat it, right? So the things that I want, the things that I look for may be very different. So I think the biggest question is like, what is that direction going to look like for the franchise? I'm just excited that it seems as though we're going to get something a little bit different than that, because I really want to see what they do with it. Yeah. Because even though Legends Arceus was scary territory, this unknown entity of a game that we really didn't know what to expect, like I said, it was probably my most enjoyable experience playing the game.
I think it brought me back to the series. Like I had a lot of mistrust after, Let's Go, Scarlet and Violet. What is it? Sword and Shield.
Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl.
Yeah, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Like Sword and Shield actually wasn't so bad, but there was a lot of complaints. Dexit had just happened. I was like, what is happening to this beautiful series? And Legends, just like, people throw around the word soul a lot, even when they're not referring to SoulSilverArt. And I think Legends Arceus, yeah, it's full of soul. It just feels like a passion piece, right? There's a lot of intention, right?
It feels alive.
There's like a narrative that you're playing, and it's like I feel like you could feel the creators, the artists behind it, crafting this thing. They're like, we want you to feel like this.
That you're in this stripped down world, like at the beginning of time, essentially, not necessarily like exactly,
sure,
but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's the vibe.
Of this world, that is such an awesome setting to be put in as a Pokemon lifelong Pokemon fan. This idea that I'm here at the beginning, helping kind of craft the future of the world. And when I go out into the wild, there is this risk. There is this scare that I'm going to run into this giant Rapidash that's going to take me out.
Yeah.
And obviously, now that we, if I were to go open it up right now and leave Jubilife, I'd be like, oh, I'll just walk past this thing. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, sure.
Experience was something that was exciting. It was different.
Yeah.
It was something that we really didn't see out of Pokemon before. Even though they did have like the alphas and stuff or whatever they were called in did they have the alphas? No, they had the
totems.
The statics and the totems in Alola, and then the statics in Sword and Shield. But they did it in a much different capacity in Legends Arceus, and I think it added a lot to it. And it was fun to shiny hunt those alphas as well. I did enjoy that. So and then they mixed up the formula with the gyms too. So I think there's a lot of room to explore. And I know I've seen a ton of theories about what ZA could be in the catacombs under the city, and where could we be going? What are the mysteries we're going to find out with Volcanion, or where's the tie-in going to be here?
Yeah, there's a lot of rumors out there.
There's so many pieces that
a lot of theories.
See. So I feel like I'm trying to follow Kingdom Hearts at this point because there's so many things going on now, right? But that's true. A game I love, but can't even keep up with it anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun avenues to explore. So I just hope that they're not afraid to experiment, because I think that's when we've seen, in my opinion at least, some of their best work.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys have anything else to say on that. I'm gonna pivot us a little bit.
You're good. Pivot.
Yeah, you can if on time. But I was just thinking about like just Scarlet and Violet. I don't know. My experience wasn't like that, so I feel like people had different experiences. I do agree.
That's every game.
I do agree about the soul amount that they put into it. I feel like they took on too much, if that makes sense. And I don't know if like open world continues on past Gen 10 or 11. I feel like you're right. They'll stick with it for a little bit. But if it doesn't stick, like if we keep getting games like this, I feel like they'll try to mix it up.
Man, that just it's like, we say if it doesn't stick, but like when you look at the sales numbers,
it's stuck. Yeah,
it's true.
So again, when I feel like it's so important when I talk about this, at least, right? Like I always try to emphasize, like, one, I'm really biased, and two, I'm definitely not the target audience, right? At this point. So you're right though. Everyone's gonna have their own experience, and that's okay too. And I think one of the things that I would like to see more of in the community is just an open, and maybe just in general, is just an openness
in the world.
Because we're all going to have a different experience, right? Like,
absolutely.
My game might have lagged a ton, and it really crushed my hopes, and yours might have played smoother because you had a better Switch than mine, or whatever.
My game never.
I got a better cartridge, I guess, because I didn't have any issues except for when we got to the Indigo disc, or even Kitakami was like a little bit. But Indigo Disc was like.
See, but what make of Switch do y'all have? Because like I remember we've had OLED discussions before.
I've got the OLED as well.
Okay, see, I don't have an OLED.
I'm not using the OLED. I've got the
Mario
one.
There it is.
The Mario Nintendo Switch.
Pay to play. Pay to win.
Mine is. I don't think mine is quite launch era, but it was like a year after launch. I bought it when they announced Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee because I was like, oh, clearly Pokemon's moving.
Yeah, it's still pretty early.
So it was early.
Yeah.
So we want to thank our supporters. First off, we want to thank our mythical tier supporters: Soul of the Skeleton, Trash Panda, Ron Stoll, Brandon, Candace Wendy's, and Case. We want to thank our Arceus supporters, A Very Great Deal, Vinay Purum, Hayes, and SEH Art Gold. And last but certainly not least, in fact, very, very much not least, we want to give a super gigantic, a Dynamaxed shout out to our Game Freak Inc. level supporters, Drogain and Bramtastic.
Let's go, guys. Let's go. The fact that these are coming through.
Have to get the flying type.
Yeah.
You
The
can
fact that
be
these are
whatever
still
type
you guys
want.
are sticking with us through the months. Through the weeks. I'm loving it so much. It's been a weird period making videos this time of year, but you guys are getting us through. The channel is growing so much. We've got so much bonus content on our archive. We got a lot of stuff in the works. If you want to support Hidden Power, if you want to see more content like this, and if you want your name to be shouted out, if you want to join our secret Discord, watch more bonus episodes, there's going to be a link in the description to become a Patreon supporter, or you can support right here on YouTube and get all of those videos right here on YouTube. So, aDrive, Dan, that's the respectful thing to say. You're right here. Dan, you're doing something that some people are doing, right? You're starting to branch out. You're starting to create your own fantasy series. Right?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's doing it like he is.
No.
Oh yeah.
But I do think this is like the next. This is the level up. This is the next play, right? You start as a content creator, and then you say, "I love Pokemon, but I want to make my own thing," right? So tell us a little bit about Elestrals.
Yeah, so that's exactly it, right? So I spent a decade creating Pokemon content. I love Pokemon, man. It's been a huge part of my life. You don't make 5,000 videos on something if you don't really love it, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's really important to highlight here. But at the beginning of 2022, I was sitting at my desk on January 1st. This is a true story. And I was saying to myself, okay, I got a new year ahead of me. What's next? What do I want to do? And I was a few months away from hitting 1 million subs on YouTube, which I've since lost, but that's okay.
So
I was a few months away from hitting 1 million, and I knew that was going to be a big chapter for me, and it was a big goal that I wanted to hit. And I was like, I really am looking for a new challenge. I want to do something new because I've kind of done it, right? Like when it comes to not to sound cocky or whatever, but I've really checked off all the boxes I wanted to check off as a content creator. I wanted to hit 100,000 subs. I did that. I wanted to hit 1 million subs. We somehow managed that too. And I managed to do a lot of really cool things creating Pokemon content. So for me, it was like I needed a new challenge. I needed a new bone to chase. I wanted to try something different. And I decided, you know what, why don't I try to make my own game? And I don't have the skills or the technical knowledge to code a game or to make a video game. So I decided that I was going to make a card game because I had loved and played card games my entire life. I competed in Yu-Gi-Oh! I played Pokemon. I just was always into card games. And I had a really strong belief system that card games were an instrumental part of my childhood in terms of my growth, right? In terms of developing strategy and making friends and learning about competition and memorizing different cards. And there's a lot that goes into learning a card game. So that was something tangible that I felt that I could do because I had experience playing card games. I had this creative motive to want to build something and do something. And I'll tell you, man, when I think back to that day and that idea, I sat down at my desk and I just wrote out all of what Elestrals is today, pretty much, right? In one notepad file, a Word doc. And I just wrote the whole game out in one session. And I just put my head down and I just went and made it happen. A couple of days later, I hired our first artist. Within a few months, we had a team of artists. Within a few months after that, by summer, we're revealing our prototypes and our decks. And then by November of that year, we launched our Kickstarter where we raised about $1.5 million. And since then, we've continued to try to push the envelope and create a game that is fun for people to play and brings people together. That was a big part of it coming out of COVID. I really wanted to bring people together. I felt like that was an important piece. I've got 2 young kids myself, so having them kind of have something to play growing up and something to meet people with, and again, learn that strategy, learn that competitive aspect of playing games and things like that. It was something that was just really important to me, and I wanted to challenge myself and put my creative energy into something as opposed to kind of doing what I had been doing, right? Because I had done it for so long, and obviously I still create content around Pokemon, but it's all, for me, it was about chasing a passion, chasing a dream. It's funny though, again, looking back, I don't think I ever could have comprehended how hard this was going to be. It's really hard. And how just how much has to happen to do the things that I want to do, but I'm doing it. I'm making it happen. I'm show up every day. I put my head down. I grind like I've done my whole career. Yeah. And it's a challenge, that's for sure. But I think
that's what makes it rewarding.
That's it, right? When I look back at my life's work one day, right, I want to feel proud. I want to feel accomplished. I don't want to be in a situation where I just got comfortable just for the sake of being comfortable and I became stagnant. Like I've done more personal growth in the last, year and a half or 2 years than I probably have in the last 10 combined. And I've challenged myself in ways that I never thought I could challenge myself. And it leads to growth because every time you run into a challenge, it's not about the challenge. The challenges are going to come. I deal with challenges every single day. It's how you respond to those challenges. It's how you work through the difficulties. And that period of growth and this process for me has been worth everything, right? It's something that I'm just so excited about every single day to show up for and create. So for those who don't know, I'm creating a game called Alestrals. It's a trading card game. It features monsters very similar to Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, right? There's a lot of heavy inspiration there. I'm not going to shy away from that. But I do believe we have a lot of unique aspects to our game. We've got some incredible creatures, including the spirits. We've got 8 different spirits that represent 8 different elements, and the spirits fuel the Alestrals and the creatures. But there's a heavy tie-in between the casters, which are like your Pokemon trainers, and the Alestrals themselves. There's a bond between them that's very unique that allows them to do a lot of really cool things. So I'm excited to continue to develop the lore and continue to develop the game as we're releasing new cards and rolling out into card shops right now, which is really awesome. We're in a bunch of stores, so that's starting to like really uptick, and we've got our second set coming out next month. So it's been really rewarding.
Nice. That's honestly so crazy. I really want to know more about like how you create these monsters, because I'll tell you this, when I first saw that you're doing Alestrals, there definitely was a disconnect for me as a player who as a person who primarily plays Pokemon as a video game. A card game is so different from what I'm typically used to. I think I've heard that you do have a video game in the works at some point.
Yeah, so I'll answer the question about the video game stuff, and then I'll talk about the monsters. So
yeah, the monsters are cool.
Yeah, the goal of Alestrals is to create an RPG style game. I have a lot of ideas for that. We've definitely done some of the groundwork. I think anyone who's ever made a video game understands that like there's a lot of pre-production work that happens before you even code a single line, right? So that's the stuff that we're doing right now, is writing the stories, making the map of the world, understanding how these relationships works between the casters or the trainers, right? Like in Pokemon terms, and the Alestrals themselves. What's the relationship between the caster and the spirit that they're bonded with? How, I really wanted to capture a few different elements that maybe aren't seen in Pokemon. So all of that pre-production planning is happening. It's just a matter of, time, funds, etc. But the plan is to eventually release a video game. And I'm very much so looking forward to that day, because I think it's going to enhance the franchise in a way that we just wouldn't have otherwise.
Do you think it'd play like a Pokemon game?
I think that there would be a lot of similarities. I think there's a few things that I really want to differentiate on. I would really want to differentiate on the battle system. I really want to differentiate on the quest aspect of it. To me, Alestrals is more about adventure.
Sure, it's like Skyrim.
It's definitely a lot more about adventure. A lot less about battles, a lot more about adventure, a lot more about the bond that you have with your Alestrals. I'm a big fan of skill trees, so that's an area that I really want to explore one day in the video game. Not just the skill tree for the Alestrals themselves, but the skill trees for the casters and their ability to be adept in various elemental areas, getting different bonuses that way. I think Pokemon has touched on it a little bit in kind of some of their lore of how certain Pokemon trainers may have an affinity to water-type Pokemon or whatever, but it's really not a thing in the games outside of, swimsuit lady Sarah or whatever has 2 Goldines. It's not really a thing, but I think when I look at the world of Alestrals, it's so much more important because the caster is bonded to an elemental spirit, so they naturally are going to have an affinity to that particular element of Alestral. So there's a lot of really cool things that we can do to tie in there, not to exclude the opportunity to have a diverse team, but the opportunity to really buff when you have that synergy. So those are a couple of the areas that I really want to explore.
So how many artists have you worked with? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of artists who are friends of the podcast are actually working with you.
Well, that's it. So I've been fortunate enough because of my kind of, experience in the Pokemon space. I was able to find a lot of really good Pokemon Fakemon artists to become artists for Alestrals. That's really where a lot of the artists kind of started from. Some of them, now that we've got expanded a little bit, we've kind of found some artists that maybe specialize in landscapes and things like that. But our first initial artists were all really Fakemon designers, people who made games like fake Pokemon for fan games and stuff.
Can you name drop some of them?
Well, yeah, Elite Four is a big one, right? They were the ones who did most of Xenoverse. Costa is another one who was early. Dan Reyes, who's done a ton of stuff. Mosby is another one. I mean, we've got Bromo, Jumbo is another one. A ton of artists.
That's cool.
Shaman or Cup of Fee. She's an incredible creator now as well. So you asked me, we're over 50 people working for Alestrals right now.
No way, 50?
Wow.
I have 50 people reporting to me. It is an incredible endeavor.
That is
and again, a lot of the people are artists spread across the world creating our art, but nonetheless, we have just an incredible team, and it's been really, really awesome to see it come together. I actually sent a message to our head artist, Dan Reyes, yesterday. He was the one who created the first designs of Alestrals, the spirits, and I sent him a picture of my daughter sitting in front of all of her Alestral spirit plushies, because we just got new plushies done.
That's sick.
Kind of like this guy here. So she was sitting in front of all of her little plushies. And I said it to Dan, and I said, I just, this is a thank you. Think of the things that you've created already. I always try to make sure that I show them a little extra love. But Yeah, it's crazy to think back because I don't think either of us expected it to get where it is right now. That's for sure.
That's nuts,
Yeah.
dude.
Wow.
Have you ever considered, riding the line of copyright infringement, a la Pal World?
Listen, when so Leonite actually you pull up, right? And I think a lot of people would look at Leonite and say, oh, well, that's Pyroar. But the reality of it is to have this idea of a fire lion is not something,
Right.
Yeah.
right? So like when
This
I
is a cool
can tell you
design.
that another Celestial Galaxy, where after we had made it, we realized the tail looked a little too similar to Kyogre's tail, so we changed it, right? So
Oh,
the
cool.
last thing I want to do is go the Pal World route where it ends up being a Pokemon clone because
Yeah.
Pokemon is a huge inspiration for me. No matter what I do, there's always going to be an association of aDrive
Yeah.
and Pokemon. When you do something for, again, 10 years, it's hard to break away from that. I don't need to break away from that. I that's okay if people see me as a guy who created or played a lot of Pokemon. I think our designs stand on their own, and I think that when we look at it as a whole, we definitely want to try to find our own identity. And I think that this has been a big discussion for us internally, our art teams, as we work on our future sets. I think our artwork has just gone through the roof. Our team has gotten so much better. But when we look at what we're developing for future sets as well, we're getting even further away from the art style and stuff and really trying to find our own identity in the space. And I think we've done a great job in doing that. And I can't wait to show more of the sets that we've created because while set 1 is out, which is what you're viewing right now, set 2 launches next month called Frostfall. Set 3 will be this summer called Daybreak. Set 4 will be in Q4 at the end of the year. And we're actually, already developing set 5, which will be for next year.
How does that work though? Is that akin to like Pokemon Generations, or are you thinking more? It's like the same group of monsters, but you're just releasing different sets like of cards, or will there be eventually another generation? I think there's 5 elements, right? Or what are they called? 5 spirits.
So,
could there be a 6th?
Yeah. So
Or
there's
7th?
5 elements in the game right now for base set. Set 2 is Frostfall. That's going to introduce the 6th element is Frost.
Okay.
Set 3 is Daybreak. That'll introduce the next element, Solar. And then set 4 has not been announced the title, but it's going to focus primarily on our 8th element, which is Lunar.
Oh,
So
that's
the
cool.
first
Okay.
sets are going to introduce and have all 8 elements into the game. And then when I look at that in its collection, which ends up ultimately being, I think this is the first time I'm telling people, it's a little under 300 total creatures. When
I was
look
going to
at
ask.
that total amount of creatures after the course of this 4 sets. That is really what our generation 1 is, right? And I think from there, I will very much so slow down on the number of new Elestrals that are introduced to the game for a lot of reasons. But one of the main ones is I don't want to just keep making hundreds and hundreds of Elestrals. That was never the plan. The goal was definitely to go along the more of the Pokemon route than the Yu-Gi-Oh route, where these creatures come up again. And it's not that, we have, I don't know, Dark Magician's a bad example because they made like 800 of them. But I'm sure you can think of, in Yu-Gi-Oh, you have a creature on a card and then you'll never see that creature.
Yeah.
Whereas in Pokemon, you have Pikachu and then you have like a million different Pikachus, right? So at Elestrals, it really takes that approach. When you look at set 5 and some of the sets beyond, you're going to start to see a lot of the similar Elestrals that we saw, but reimagined in new ways. And I think that's going to be really exciting.
That is good. That's always something that I've said I loved about Pokemon cards is how like there'll be a design, and even like the anime for Pokemon, like you see a Pokemon that maybe you just it's just a Pokemon to you, but you see it in the anime or you see artwork of it 100%. And it's really cool. And then you see another design in the next set and it's, you start to fall more and more in love with the thing. It gives it personality and soul.
That's it, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head. And that's one of my biggest challenges at this stage of the building Elestrals is I can show people these awesome creatures through card and through different card arts and alt arts and things like that. But now the next challenge is how do we portray these awesome creatures in a different way? So that way people can find them and see them in different lights. And that's where we start experimenting with 3D animations and things like that. We have people on our team that do that stuff. So we're definitely looking to explore all those different routes. But I think you hit the nail right on the head. And I had that same experience with Pokemon. There's so many Pokemon that like I wouldn't care anything about them at all. I see them in the anime or I see them in the card game or I see them in Pokemon Go and all of a sudden they have this new connection to me. And I think that when I look at Pokemon as in its entirety, that's one of the things that they've really excelled at. They've done such a great job of portraying their creatures in different forms of media to allow people to have a connection to them in a way that they otherwise wouldn't have. And I think that that's definitely something to aspire towards.
How do you create these designs? Like, are you leaving, or do you give the artists maybe like so we've seen in interviews that like I always think of this one in Gen 5 they were like, hey, we need more water type Pokemon, and then they just created like Basculin, right?
Yeah.
Like is that something? Is that kind of how it works? Where you just say like, all right, we need some of these, give me whatever you can think of, or are you kind of at the helm crafting the actual monsters at all?
I think it's a little bit of both, right? So I think especially when we look at the early development, like the base set of Lestrals especially, and even going into all of the first 4 sets, a lot of it is, okay, I have this idea. This is what I want you to kind of work with. I would send a prompt of a few different descriptors that I'm looking for of what I want this creature to do and what I want it to look like and so on and so forth. And then I would get some sketches back and we would kind of work through it there. I'm involved in every design, every card art involved in. I write every effect with few exceptions. I have a team of people that test, but I write the game. So that's one thing I'm very proud of. And with the art stuff, like I said, when we're going through that, a lot of the time it is like, hey, let's do this. And so much of the inspiration for Lestrals is based on Greek mythology. So we have a lot to work with in that regard, right? So we utilize the Greek divine gods, Poseidon, Zeus. A handful of them are introduced in our game in a unique way. And then when we look at the creatures, there's oftentimes in many situations inspiration. But again, I kind of allow myself to just do whatever. Like Zaptor obviously is a little raptor. He's not in Greek mythology, but dinosaurs are awesome. So he's in my game. Right?
So he's in there.
Are you ever going to have a bug type?
We have
a bug element?
Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah,
okay.
We have insects, yeah. So they're pretty good. And the first spirit we ever revealed, Terratlas, is insectoid.
Nice.
That's the little guy with the boulder on his back. So, but yeah, so I usually will provide a prompt or a general idea of what I'm looking for from the artist, and then they'll send me sketches. There are periods of time though where we'll go through like a creative period where we'll say, okay, for the next 3 to 4 weeks, we're not making any new cards. Everybody is just sketching new ideas, and you can hit me with whatever. Hit me with a prompt, an idea you have, whatever it may be, and shoot me a design, and then. I mean, I can tell you, I have a library of like 600 plus designs that are scrapped.
Jeez.
We have so much stuff.
Wow.
It is unreal because, and again, with the way we do it is it's great for the artist because I'm like, I pay them for all the sketches too. So it ends up being this huge win for everybody. They get to just creatively have a blast creating awesome creatures. And I get to have this library of hundreds of creatures to say, yeah, you know what? We might use that one day, or, let's put this one aside. Let's mark it as scrap for now or whatever. We have this big database of everything. So having that has also been really helpful because in the situation I'm in now where I'm like, okay, I maybe want to add just 2 or 3 new Elestrals to the set or whatever. I could look at this database of like 500-600 plus Elestrals that didn't make it and say, you know what, let's take this one and tweak it a little bit, or let's change the color palette on this one or whatever it may be. So that's always a fun place to explore.
That's cool.
And then kind of the last thing is we have what's called Nexus forms in our game. So it's very much so inspired by regional forms where you take, a Pokemon and you change it to a different form or a different type. And Elestrals, because so much of the Elestral is how it bonded with the spirit, it gets its elemental powers from the spirit that it's bonded with. So when you take that spirit away and you give it a different elemental spirit, in a lot of cases, these Elestrals can change their forms, and it also changes their names and their power too. So
where would I see that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the best way to look at it would be you'd have to pull up the Frostfall stuff because there's some Nexus forms in Frostfall. We'll take an Elestral. An example is Tectorus. Tectorus is this big Minotaur bull. It's an Earth Elestral, and then you take that Earth Spirit out of it and you give it a Frost Spirit, and it becomes Arcturus. And it's this big Minotaur, but it's covered in ice spikes, and it looks awesome. So we have a lot of different Elestrals that kind of do that. If I could, I'm not going to try to mess with my cameras, but I got a couple of them on my wall that'll show you that too. That having these Nexus forms has been a big part of the game, and it's an area that we can always explore because while might have a Lestral that gets one Nexus form, some won't have any, some may have more than one. So there's some really cool areas to play with. And
honestly, regional forms is one of the coolest things that Pokemon I think has ever introduced.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's kind of like a no-brainer idea. Like once it came out, it's like, why was this not a thing prior?
Right.
But I'm so glad it exists. All right, let's we get a little bit more time. Let's segue over to this will be some Patreon content. Yeah. Final question, and then we'll let you go. Do you think now that we're returning to the Kalos region, do you think we're gonna get a counterpart to Sylveon? Do you think we're gonna get a new evolution?
Oh my.
Nah, forget it, man. Listen, I gave up on that a while ago.
I agree.
I held out so much hope for so long. I was a believer. I thought Dragon Eevee was Dragion.
It's coming, dude. It's coming. Drakion.
The Shield one was lined up for Sword and Shield, and they let me down.
Yeah.
All right. I have no more hope for Eevee.
G-Max Eevee wasn't enough?
No.
G-Max Eevee was not enough.
That doesn't count. That doesn't count. Yeah,
I agree. I don't think
all right.
One of the biggest ball drops in Pokemon history is the lack of more evolutions.
Dude, it's gonna happen eventually. They've got like a 100-year plan, so I think it's gonna come eventually.
A 100-year plan.
They probably have have a 30-year plan.
Eventually, right? Like,
But-
I mean, and if they make a new type at any point, I could see them like,
Yeah.
That's
well,
We have a whole other podcast on just the type of
100%.
Oh,
We'll
yeah.
have you back on for that. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Dan, thank you so much for being here. Let the people know where they can find you, what you want to promote.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure. Like I said, this is really cool for me because I see you guys in the community all the time. And obviously, we all are working together to try to create our own different types of content and stuff. So I appreciate you guys being as part of the kind of rumor and leak community because I really do believe that a lot of you guys have kept things afloat in times where they would otherwise be very desolate. So a big thank you to you guys for that. And in terms of plugging stuff, you don't have to check out my YouTube or anything. Go check out Alestrals. Discord.gg/Alestrals is our server. We have an incredible community. We're building a card game. One of the biggest things that makes us different is that I'm in it every single day. I'm in the Discord. I'm answering questions. I'm not afraid of criticism. I'm an open book. I'm just trying to make an awesome game for everybody. So that's an experience that you're not going to get with the big companies, right? You have this really homegrown grassroots experience where I'm in it. I'm accountable. I'm going through it every single day, and I'm just trying to make something great. So I think that really sets us apart.
Awesome.
And I think we've got a great game that's about to get even greater as we start to roll out to more stores. So keep an eye out for us in your local game shop.
Love it.
Discord server.
Linked in the description. Thank you, Dan.
I mean,
Thank you. I
I'd love
appreciate you
to
guys.
say
Thank you so much.
I'd love to say thank you as well, Dan, for coming on and everything that you.
Yeah.
It's nice to like actually talk to. We didn't do this at the
I
beginning
know.
or anything, but just like nice to meet you and talk to you face to face after
Likewise,
everything.
man,
So.
for sure.
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, I joked about it a few times, but like I got a lot of video inspiration from a lot of the stuff that you guys put out. So I really appreciate that. You know, I know some people look at it in like a weird way, but like we're all just trying to have fun and share the love that we have for the franchise and move it along in the way that we can and share that with our audience and stuff. So
100%.
that's what it's about.
Big thanks.
Yeah. Yes,
Sweet.
Soul has made so many jobs. Soul
I know.
has made so many jobs. We all owe
Oh,
him.
boy.
We all owe him.
I don't know.
All right,
I don't
man.
know about that.
All right, thank you guys for watching. Subscribe. We'll see you soon. Peace.
All right.
Bye.